Good evening, everybody, and welcome to State of the Sasquatch for the year 2023. For those who are not aware, I am in fact Sasquatch, and this is my yearly address to those who are still tuned in to this largely dead channel. It is of note that this is the 100th entry into the Sasquatch Speaks playlist, and as is the custom, I will be addressing my remarks tonight to the four primary areas of human life, at least such as we know them in the current day, which are faith, family, fitness, and finance. I do apologize, I suppose, if you can say that it would be necessary to have an apology, that this is out a day late, hopefully not $1 short, but a day late. Typically, I try to release these on the same day and at the same time as the State of the Union address for the United States of America. I was otherwise engaged, and that is both a truism and a foreshadowing statement to things which shall be discussed here tonight. To begin, a review of the faith journey which I have been on in the year 2022. As is my practice, I read through the entirety of the Bible 6 times in different translations. In order to broaden my understanding, I was also able to be used at my church and other capacities to teach several home Bible studies, to be able to teach as part of our regular teaching staff at the church. I was able to also, able to is perhaps not the right word, but perhaps forced to, or heavily leaned upon and coerced into providing counselor services at a children's camp, not a youth camp, which I've done before, but in fact a true children's camp. And I was stuck in a dorm with 40 boys under the age of 10 for 4 days. There were 4 other counselors who were supposed to be my assistants and helpers, or some combination of that, me helping them, and it ended up that when the lights went out, everybody else left and I was stuck in a room. It apparently did not occur to these other counselors that young children do not simply do what they are told and must be either coerced or threatened with great bodily harm, mostly kidding, else they will not comply with directives given to them, particularly as it refers to staying quiet and in their bunk and not messing with the kid from another church two bunks down the line. I now have a great amount of experience with this, having dealt with, again, 40 boys for the duration of 4 days, and am 100% convinced that in the future I shall keep all of my counseling duties to those over 4 feet tall, preferably. Not saying anything against short people, it's just that the proclivity for most people who are of elder age to be over 4 feet, I think, is a reasonable expectation. In the same year, I also was able to take over, although not in long duration, but for a short period of time. I was able to take over a portion of my church's weekly Bible study and was hosting that in my home. I was hosting it not just in the teaching aspect, but also in the providing of food for that, and discovered that I actually have a much higher propensity and talent, as it were, for preparing not bad meals. They were actually quite good. In the 3 months that I was the host, I never once had a repeat, and I cooked every single week except for 2, in which those 2 weeks I was exceptionally burdened elsewhere and had to seek the cooking aid of a local Middle Eastern restaurant and a pizza place. But aside from that, I was able to expand my repertoire of available dishes and got generally good feedback on all of my attempts, even some of my more outlandish experimental ones, which was surprising because I wasn't quite sure myself how those were going to turn out when I started putting them together. So, glory be to God for that. Perhaps the most significant thing that has happened in the past year is that I am now officially a licensed minister. That is something that came to pass back in November. After many years of sort of false starting and trying and failing and putting it off and saying, well, we'll try again in 6 months, and then 6 months later, and then 6 months later, it has finally come to a place where I have been officially licensed now as a member of the United Pentecostal Church International for several months. You might say I'm getting to be serious about this, and seriousness is something which is something I'm getting to be quite a lot about. We'll address that here in a second. It was an interesting moment when I walked into the interview room and was faced with a group of friends who were all elder ministers and who knew me quite well. And their first question to me was, "So, Minister White, if we were to give you your license, would you be willing to shave off your sideburns?" Well, that was a most interesting question, and it sort of set the tone for the entire thing. It was truly that I walked into a room full of friends to have my licensure interview. The deep theological questions I thought I was going to be asked did not take place. Much more, they were personal questions and asked in reference to my commitment to the church and to the truth and to the ministering of the gospel and to people. But it was a very, very pleasant experience, and I'm very thankful for it, and very thankful that now I am able to finally say that I have completed that next step of my progression into becoming a more complete minister of the gospel. In the previous year, I also had several large family events happen. Perhaps the most recent one was, unfortunately, that my grandmother died. She was 97 years old. And I must say, though, that when she went out, it was in the most grandmotherly way that she possibly could have, considering that she is, in fact, my grandmother. After falling in her assisted living room and having complete access to a phone and means of communicating with people at about 10:30 at night, she decided it was too late to bother anyone, so she would just simply spend the night on the floor. She pulled the covers off her bed and curled up, and at 9:30 the next morning, she called my aunt and uncle and said, "Oh, I've fallen down and can't get up. Can you come help me?" So they rushed over there, and they picked her up, and they said, "Okay, we're taking you to the hospital." And again, in her quite grandmotherly way, she said, "Well, today's not very convenient. Can you come back tomorrow?" Well, of course, the answer to that was no, and they took her immediately to the hospital, where they discovered that there was a significant worsening of a number of the issues that she had already been facing health-wise, and that, unfortunately, did end up leading to her untimely demise just a few weeks later. I did get to see her before she died, which was good, because it had been quite some time. I'd seen her actually just a few months before at my birthday, which gave me some interesting perspective, which I'll address here in a second. A few weeks before my grandmother died, I was walking up to my house, and walking up my front steps, I heard a small "nyah" behind me, and turned around to find a small kitten approaching me with no fear of my gigantic stature. She walked right up, dug her claws into my leg, and proceeded to climb her way up to my shoulders, where she claimed me as her own. In fact, during the course of this address, if you happen to hear any rattling sounds, that is because she has become a great fan of the game of fetch and is bringing me her little rattle ball over and over again in the hopes that I will throw it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. She is delightful and cute, but also a pain in the butt, which is why she is named Koshka, which is Russian for a cat, but has become affectionately to be known as the Gremlin, because she gets into absolutely everything. To this day, she's the only cat I have ever owned who has found a way to get outside of the house while nobody was there to open the door. Twice. Fortunately, she likes her happy home, and she, upon finding herself outside, decided it was not in her best interest to remain out there, and stuck very close to the door in the hopes that I would return soon and allow her to come back in. In terms of folks gaining access to my house, perhaps it is time to address the most important thing of this previous year. As I said, I recently got my minister's license, which was of some particular concern to me at the time because the man in charge of figuring out whether I was of good enough moral character to be worthy of receiving a minister's license was also the pastor of a young lady who I started dating back in June. Met her in the last weekend of May at his church, so if he has any complaints, it's his fault because technically he was responsible for us meeting. And we have been dating very happily now for the entire duration. There's not been a single week that has gone by where we have not found some way to enjoy each other's company. Even in moments of sickness and things like that, we've been able to find a way to still make it happen. And a few weeks ago, no, not even a few weeks ago, I take it back. Just last week, last Tuesday, on January the 31st, she made me tremendously happy when I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. At present, we are planning to be married on April the 22nd, and more things are going to be following about that, but first we have to plan them out. So this is a very exciting and long-awaited step, and yeah, I couldn't really be happier about that. I think I finally found the right one. And by think, I mean I'm pretty confident. If I wasn't confident, we wouldn't be getting married. Very confident. That leads us into the fitness portion of this, although that is kind of an abbreviation. I suppose that probably requires a little bit more explanation as to precisely how we met. But perhaps I'll give that in greater detail at a later date, as I am trying to meet some level of reasonable deadline. You'd be amazed how many stories you accumulate in just a few short months. In the present moment, for fitness, I'm big. I've gained over 20 pounds in the previous year, and not in the good way. As my bride-to-be has pointed out, we should both be trying to get in shape and everything for the forthcoming wedding, and so I set to do that and discovered just how tremendously out of shape I am. In previous years, I did a stream with Sir Oswin on a New Year's Eve night, wherein we had a push-up contest for an hour, and I soundly beat him by over 100 push-ups. And I'm fairly confident to say that if we were to have a similar contest today, I would lose because I did not get anywhere near the same number as push-ups I did before, even in a half an hour on Monday when I was attempting to work out, and I am still in severe pain. Severe pain. So I must get myself in a much more physically ready position, just, out of love. If you want some more information about why that is, I would recommend you look up the social media accounts of a Virginia congressman named Nick Freitas, and he'll give you a wonderful reason for that, if you're of a mind to find out. In terms of finance, I made more money last year than I have ever made before, which is on year after year after year benefit. By a considerable amount, I made more money last year than I did the year before. That allowed me to purchase and move into a house and live there now over a full year. Wow. It's amazing how quickly time flies in that regard. But I've lived here now and got most of the repairs done. Initially, it seemed as though my repairs were going to be about $6,000, and that certainly ballooned far beyond that. I believe right now the total cost for repairs to the place have been somewhere in the $13,000 to $14,000 mark, which has been just a delight and joy to try and find a way to pay off, but here I am. Also in the previous year, I was shifted around and adjusted and promoted and everything else, however you want to consider it. My position at the glass factory, which I'm still employed at, I had started the year as a drill operator, having been formerly a oven operator and unloader. And in the previous year, 2022, I went from drill operator to CNC operator, back to drill operator, to general purpose, everything we can possibly ask you, to now the official trainer for the entire glass factory, which is an entirely new position which was created in an attempt to keep me employed there, as I had received another offer and was considering taking it. They created a new position, offered it to me, and it has now been my responsibility to define precisely what that is, because training is something that the glass factory has been woefully poor in executing in times past. And so my efforts at reorganizing their entire training program have so far been largely successful, despite the fact that it took about 3 months to actually figure out what we were going to do. Now that we've figured out and we have started to implement a plan, we have seen wonderful results, I think, and I'm looking forward to future results also expanding and growing and getting better in the future, as improving those training programs is the entire point of my position. As it has been mentioned, or certainly recognized perhaps, this is the only video that I've been posting every year for the last several years on this channel, and I unfortunately don't have a particularly strong inclination to change that. I do like the sort of accountability that it brings, and the reflection that it brings, and the record that it has for all of my past exploits. I may have some things that I'll post on here in the future. I may find some way to provide to the people who are on here, or at least a part of my Discord, which is still there. I wouldn't say it's active, but it is there. A means to connect and view perhaps the forthcoming Sasquatchian wedding in April. But in terms of posting things on here, I find myself in a place of just not really having the time or inclination. I'm very busy at my job. I've been, busy dating a girl, and I've been busy doing a lot of other things, ministry-wise, church-wise, just a lot of things all sort of adding up together without allowing me for a particularly robust opening in any of my scheduling to allow me to record or to post anything on here, or even to live stream. I did do Kuya carols this past year, but that is not entirely dependent on me. That has some dependence on other people, and as it would appear, that is the thing that brings me the most into alignment with content creation, as it were. My attempts at content creation this past year were, I think, enjoyable. I joined Masters and Wild West Dan and several other people in several different attempts at D&D campaigns, all of which were interrupted and reshifted or canceled in the Wizards of the Coast Hasbro fiasco of a few weeks ago, which is a personal vexation to me, because in the campaign that I was running, I had put in a tremendous amount of back work, and I have still a very firm connection to all that that world that I had built, as it was entirely created by myself, and had like 300 or 400 named characters already written out, ready to go as soon as my players were able to get there, which they never did. And now that that campaign is canceled, they probably never will, which is vexing. So I'm also toying with the idea of trying to do something with the pages and pages and pages of notes that I have, but that is all still speculative at this point. If I do have anything that comes from that, I will certainly make it generally aware, either on my Discord or here on, the old Sasquatch channel. It's kind of weird. I started this years ago, content creation, I mean, specifically to fill a niche and a void in the Monster Hunter community. I wanted to just be the podcast that wasn't airing. And that led to some experimentation on my part, doing things, trying to build a community, and failing over and over and over and over at all the many things that I tried to get things going, which ultimately I find to just be okay. I don't have to be internet famous as I've joked about in the past. I don't have to be something special. I don't have to be anything more than what I am. I'm finding more and more that my attentions and my interests are trending into the real. I say that having just a few minutes ago come from my second trip in 2 days to the gun range, which is why I wasn't able to get this out on my normal schedule, because yesterday was my first opportunity to take the future Mrs. Sasquatch to that gun range, and it was a good time. As I said, an engagement. Other than this, it's not that this isn't important to me, because clearly it is as I'm doing it, but the priority of it has fallen dramatically. And I would say that that has been the case for the last several years, as there has been no real push from me to make it a regular thing, to make it happen, as it were. I've just been very comfortable with letting it be that once-a-year video that I make. And for those of you who are still tuning in and finding some level of interest in my year-to-year life, not my day-to-day, but my year-to-year occurrences, I thank you. It helps me find the impetus to make this happen at all. But at that same time, I'm not sure how much more I can offer you. So, for all of the good things that have happened in this previous year and all the good things which are going to happen in the year coming, I wish you all an excellent year. As excellent as I expect my year to be, and perhaps even more so. Although, considering the long, long journey it has been to get to where I am now, and where indeed I shall be in just a few short months, I sincerely, not doubt, but it would impress me greatly if anyone were able to catch up to the level of joy and fulfillment which I currently feel, and am pressing myself more and more into. So, for the year 2022, let us call it to a close, and for the year 2023, let us look forward in great expectation for the good things which shall be, and the good things which we shall make to be, both together, making for an excellent, excellent year. Thank you all. I love you as my small, small audience, and I'll see you, at least, next year. Good night.